Young Millionaire came to a remote town for peace. Love was the last thing he expected to find. The cold wind whispered through the mountains as Ethan Hayes stepped off the dusty old bus, a lone duffel slung over his shoulder. The town of Maple Ridge greeted him with stillness, a quiet too pure for a man who had spent his entire life surrounded by city noise and corporate chaos. 30 years old. CEO of a tech empire he built from a dorm room. Forbes' youngest visionary of the year. The kind of success most people dream of. But Ethan? He hadn't slept soundly in months. The noise inside his head was louder than any applause he had ever received. So he left. Left it all behind, the high-rise apartment, the boardroom meetings, the paparazzi flashes, and the fake smiles at cocktail parties. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. Just booked a one-way ticket to nowhere. Maple Ridge wasn't even on the map until his driver broke down outside town limits, and Ethan had to hitch a ride with an old man in a truck who offered him boiled peanuts and silence. He needed silence. He rented a tiny cabin near the woods, far from the town center. The paint was peeling, the heater groaned, and the plumbing coughed more than it ran. But it was perfect. Here, no one knew his name. No one cared about his net worth. He was just Ethan, the quiet outsider who kept to himself. For the first time in years, he woke up to birds instead of phone alarms. He walked dirt roads instead of red carpets. He cooked his own food, read books by the fire, and sat by the lake watching leaves dance on the surface. And then came her. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The sky was blushing with the first touch of sunset when Ethan saw her for the first time. She stood by the community notice board in front of a small bakery, pinning a flyer with gentle hands. Her name was Grace. He didn't know that yet, but even from across the street, something about her made the air still. She wore no makeup, her hair in a loose braid, flowers smudged on her cheek. But it wasn't her appearance that caught him, it was the kindness in her eyes when she turned to help a young boy pick up his fallen groceries. Ethan watched from a distance, heart strange in his chest. He returned the next day under the excuse of needing a loaf of bread. Morning, she smiled. Fresh sourdough or honey oat? He stared at her, then blurted, whichever's warmer. She chuckled, handing him the honey oat. Her bakery was a humble place, Gracie's hearth. A small chalkboard menu, mismatched chairs, and the smell of cinnamon in the air. It became his ritual. Every morning, he'd show up. She never pried. Never asked what he did or why he looked so lost sometimes. Instead, she offered coffee and warmth. Real warmth, the kind that fills the cracks you forget you have. Over time, they talked. About small things at first. Weather. Books. Her dog named Toby who hated squirrels. He learned she had moved back to Maple Ridge after her father passed, to take over the bakery her parents had started decades ago. She had dreams of expanding, but she poured everything she earned back into keeping the place open. It's not about money, she told him once. It's about heart. This place brings people together. That's worth more than profit. Ethan didn't say much in return. But her words stuck with him. Weeks turned to months. Grace became his calm in the storm. They'd walk together after closing hours, talking under stars. She made him laugh again. Think again. Breathe again. He never told her who he really was. He didn't want to ruin it. Didn't want her to look at him like the world did. But secrets have a way of surfacing. It happened on a snowy December morning. Ethan had gone into town early to surprise Grace with fresh flowers from a roadside vendor. But as he walked back toward the bakery, a sleek black SUV pulled into Maple Ridge like a ghost from a forgotten life. From it stepped Lucas Brandt, his former CFO. Ethan froze. Ethan. You've got to be kidding me. Lucas exclaimed, rushing toward him. Man, where the hell have you been? The board is going insane. We thought you were dead. Voices rose. Curious townsfolk glanced over. Grace stepped out of her bakery with a tray of cookies, watching the scene unfold. Her smile slowly faded. The truth came out, right there, in the middle of Main Street. Ethan Hayes. Billionaire tech mogul. Disappeared CEO. And he had been in Maple Ridge this entire time. Grace said nothing. Just handed the tray to a customer and walked back inside. Ethan stood still as snow began to fall. She didn't return his calls. Didn't answer his knocks. For 3 days, he waited outside the bakery, feeling colder than the weather. On the 4th day, she finally opened the door. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. "Because I didn't want to be that guy here. I just wanted to be, me. You were. But now I don't know who that is." He wanted to explain, to tell her that the man she'd gotten to know was the truest version of himself. But how could he? When all she saw now was the mask he tried to leave behind. "I never lied to you," he said. "I just wanted something real." Grace looked at him, eyes brimming. "Then be real now." It was a turning point. Ethan realized he couldn't run from who he was. But he could choose who he became. He turned down the board's offers to return. Sold half of his shares. Donated millions anonymously to rural community funds. And quietly, he began investing in Maple Ridge. Not to change it, but to preserve it. He built a new library wing. Repaired the town's aging water system. Funded the town's only medical clinic. But none of it had his name on it. He just wanted to do right. And one day, he returned to Gracie's hearth. "Everything okay with the plumbing?" he asked. Grace nodded. "Yeah. Someone fixed it. Said it was a community grant." "Strange," he smiled. "That's lucky." She looked at him. "You didn't have to do any of this." "I didn't do it for you," he said softly. "I did it because this place, it made me human again." There was silence. Then she stepped forward, reached out, and took his hand. "Next time," she said, "just be real from the start." The bakery expanded 6 months later. With Ethan's silent support, Grace opened a second location. She hired local youth. Taught baking to kids after school. Created a community fund from her profits to help struggling families. She didn't want fame. Neither did he. Together, they built something beautiful. They'd sit on the porch some nights, sipping cocoa, watching the stars. And Ethan would whisper, "Peace. That's what I came for." And Grace would smile, leaning her head on his shoulder. "And love?" she'd ask. He'd kiss her forehead. That was the miracle I never saw coming. Years later. People still talk about Maple Ridge, the little town with the best sourdough bread and a mysterious past. They don't know the full story. They don't know that the man who changed everything once walked into town carrying only a bag and a broken heart. But they feel it. In every warm loaf handed to a stranger. In every scholarship given to a small-town dreamer. In every act of kindness that continues to ripple. Because love, when it's real, doesn't ask for credit. It just shows up, quietly, like snowfall.